Well, hello and welcome to today's program, Connect. I'm filling in for Jeff Peterson. My name is Roland Waterman, and sitting next to me I have two gentlemen with the RISE program. And you may say, what's the RISE program? I've never heard of that. Well, you're going to hear about it today, and I pray you will be inspired by what these two gentlemen have to share. To my immediate left is Stefani. Steve is from Cedar Rapids, and he has been involved with the RISE program for, I think, about 10 years?
About 8 years. Yes.
8 years. You said 2010. That's where I got the 10 from. And to his left is Bill Hickson. Deacon Bill Hickson is from Dubuque, and he's with Catholic Charities, but he's also working with the RISE program. So I want to welcome both of you men on the program today. And, you know, I believe that God is appealing to his people to care about and reach out to the less fortunate, to those who maybe didn't get off to a good start in life. And the RISE program is designed to help people who've been incarcerated. And how many of you believe that God is the God of a second chance? I can't tell you. I can remember the first time I said to the Lord as a new believer, because I really believed that once I became a Christian, I wasn't going to sin again. And I got fooled really fast. And I said, Lord, would you give me a second chance? I can't tell you how many times I've said, Lord, would you give me another chance? But these people, in spite of the things they may have done wrong in the past, deserve another chance in life. And they need help getting started and getting their feet under them when they come out of prison. So I'm going to start out by asking Stefani to share about what God is doing through the RISE program in the Cedar Rapids area. So, Steve?
Well, thank you, Roland. I guess I would like to introduce my comments, though, by saying that's exactly how I got involved in the program. Saw our priest had given a homily on the corporal works of mercy, and when he got to the corporal work of mercy that Jesus had described about visiting the imprisoned, I thought, you know, I wasn't doing enough of that in my life, and it really inspired me to get more involved in this ministry. And I have the great privilege of coordinating the adult mentoring program, which is operating in Cedar Rapids. It used to be coordinated by the 6th Judicial District Department of Corrections, which is obviously a state department under the Department of Corrections. And for many years, since 2003, I believe it was operated under the 6th Judicial District Department of Corrections. And in about 2014, they lost their grant. And so they were looking for someone to adopt the program. And so that's how the Fresh Start jail chaplaincy ministry acquired the adult mentoring program. And Fresh Start actually began as the Linn County Correctional Jail Chaplaincy Program in the 1970s, and it really is just what it sounds like. It was to send volunteers into the jail to minister to inmates, minister to them by providing church services, Alcoholics Anonymous classes, Bible study classes, or sometimes just to sit and listen to an inmate, and to let them know that they're not forgotten in the jail. That program has continued without interruption since the 1970s. It was renamed as the Fresh Start Jail Chaplaincy Program in about 1996, and has continued, and I believe at this time we have about 340 volunteers that go into the Linn County Correctional Center to minister to the men and women that are there. In about 2011, many of the folks were seeing that the same individuals were being ministered to, but in different periods of incarceration. In other words, when they would get out of jail, there were not a lot of resources available for them. Many times they were released from jail to be homeless. They didn't have jobs. They didn't have ability to get food in safe locations, and they didn't have positive support networks. And so the Fresh Start Board of Directors decided at that time to form a subsidiary, for lack of a better way to describe it, called RISE. And RISE was intended from the outset to allow individuals just getting out of jail or prison a resource point or a central point to access resources for shelter placement, for food banks, for clothing, for bus passes, sometimes just to be able to get a government issued ID, or also, just for somebody to talk to help them, deal with what they're facing that day. So it made a natural transition that the Fresh Start Jail Chaplaincy Program and RISE would adopt the adult mentoring program. And so in the adult mentoring program, we actually match individuals who are releasing from prison or jail, and we match them with adult volunteers, mentors, and these mentors will meet with the core members or the mentee, the individual, on at least a weekly basis until the person graduates, which can mean that they're getting self-sufficient, they've gotten jobs, they've got a positive place to live, and in many cases they help them reestablish family relationships and other positive support relationships. And so that was a very long description for
No, it was very good.
The program, but that's what I do.
So I heard you say that there was 320, I believe, people that are involved in the jail ministry.
Yes, 320 volunteers, 330 volunteers for the jail portion.
Wow. In
the adult mentoring program, I think currently we have a total of about 103 volunteers that are helping to volunteer. And then in the RISE program, we have volunteers that we call navigators, and there's 14 volunteers in that program.
Wow. And we're going to talk about volunteers in a little bit and the need for people like yourself. I believe this, that when we realize what Christ has done for us, that there's something inside of us that wants to give something back. Have you ever felt that way about it? I did. I felt that way right away as a new believer in Christ. When I considered what he had done for me, there was something inside of me that says, Lord, I want to give something back. And maybe you felt that way, and it's been a long time, but no one has come along to tell you what you might possibly be able to do to give back to the Lord. And the way to give back to the Lord, as it says in Matthew 25, is to visit those in prison, to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and so forth. So this is maybe an opportunity for you. Maybe you've been sitting at home just saying, gosh, I want to do something, but I don't know who to connect with or what to do. And we'll talk about the volunteer program a little bit more here after we hear from Deacon Bill. So next I would like to hear from Deacon Bill Hickson. Bill is from Dubuque, and I found out that he knows a lot of people, or a few people anyway, in the West Union area, which is where I'm from. And so we had a good time getting acquainted and realizing that we knew some of the same people up in the West Union area. So if you're from that West Union area and you know Bill, you probably recognized him already. But Brother Bill, I would like for you to share. Now, Brother Bill is with the Catholic Charities organization, and as I said earlier, they partner with the RISE ministry to help these same people that Steve was telling us about a moment ago. So, Bill, tell us what God's doing in the Dubuque area.
Well, actually, the Archdiocese of Dubuque encompasses the 30 counties in northeast Iowa.
That's right,
so
you told me that.
A fairly large territory, including West Union.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the larger cities are Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, Dubuque. We go out as far as Marshalltown and Mason City.
Oh my.
To the west, and that includes Ames as well. So there's a lot of activity going on in the county jails, and that's kind of managed at the local level. But what we do primarily through my office is to help again with the reentry program in these different areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we first got connected with the 6th Judicial District in Cedar Rapids, and also later on with RISE. We partner with them in that area. They've had a long history of involvement with reentry. They're really kind of recognized as a state leader in supporting people coming back out of
Yes.
prison and jail. And so we learned from them. We've been in existence about 12 years, 13 years, somewhere in that area. I've been with them for just under 11 years now. And our two reentry programs are primarily mentoring, which is one-to-one relationship with an individual who's getting out. And then we also have something called circles of support and accountability.
Yes.
And with the circles, you have a combination of men and women volunteers working with a single ex-offender, a single core person, we call them. And what we do is, as you said earlier, they face a lot of challenges when they get out.
Yes.
They have to find work, they have to find employment and keep it, they have to get transportation issues settled, they have to perhaps find medical assistance for their medical and mental health needs. They may be part of the recovery community and they want to get involved with AA or NA. They may have fractured relationships within their families and they need to concentrate on reestablishing the trust within their families. There's just a lot of social and economic issues that they have to deal with, and we're here to accompany them on that journey. Our circles and our mentors are there to give advice and direction and encouragement wherever it's needed. We give them rides to fill out applications for employment. We take a look at all the things that they say they need, and we see how we can fit in and help them fulfill those needs or find the resources within the community to fulfill those needs. And in addition, one of my privileges is to go into the Anamosa State Penitentiary every Tuesday. We have a group that goes there to work with a group of individuals joining the church, and it's just been that's uplifting. The high point of my week every week is to go and work with those gentlemen. And on one of the walls in the chapel, there is a painting done by an artist back about 30, 40 years ago, and it's a painting of St. Dismas. And St. Dismas is known as a good thief, the gentleman, the third person on the cross next to Jesus. And at first when you look at it, you think maybe this is Jesus, but then you get to looking and you see there's kind of a light shining off in the distance towards him, enlightening his face, and all the attention of the guards and everything is over towards this light. And so you get the impression that the artist is showing us the dignity that people have, even though they've offended the Lord.
Yes.
Like this gentleman, the Lord says, "Today you'll be with me in paradise," to him, and invites him to heaven. And so that's kind of a challenge to us who go there to see the dignity in all the people who have perhaps made mistakes in their past and now they're back on the right path.
Yes.
So that kind of summarizes our work.
Yes. And Bill told me he's been in Dubuque ever since he graduated college. Is that correct?
That's right. I'm a Loris graduate and later Clark graduate for my master's degree. So
awesome. You know, it's interesting that Bill brought up the thief on the cross, because I was just thinking about that. You know, I was speaking on behalf of someone who had been incarcerated. Since they'd gotten out, they were clean and dry for several months, and then slipped, had a bad accident, got their 5th OWI, and they were facing prison, at least a 10-year minimum prison term. And I went to court on their behalf. And when the judge asked me to speak on behalf of this person, I said, you know, I have visited with this person, and the one thing that I find about them is that they are redeemable. There's very few, to me, there's very few really evil people in the world. I think people make mistakes. People don't get off to a good start on life sometimes. And the thing that comes to mind, and I'm going to ask Steve and Bill both to respond to this, but when we're thinking about working with such people, And as you think about this and consider the possibility of maybe being a volunteer to work with such people and help them, would there be any reason for people that what they're thinking about volunteering to have any concerns or be afraid about working with people that have been incarcerated?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. Because, individuals, everyone responds to love.
Yep.
And
That's good.
everyone responds to respect. And the thing that we don't judge anybody. It's not our job to judge them. And I heard something yesterday. My wife and I were watching a Bible study that we are involved with, and but I thought it was a great phrase about that. And this Dr. Edward Sri reminded us that we should all look at each other through the eyes of Christ.
That's right.
And I thought, wow, that's a very poignant way to put it really quickly. That if I look at everyone through the eyes of Christ, then no longer do I feel this need to judge anybody, and it really liberates you. But all applicants, both on the mentoring side and on the core member side, they submit an application, and we do get into some pretty significant detail as far as background. Now, on the volunteer side, we run the application because the one thing is that somebody who's currently on probation or parole would not be able to be a mentor in our program.
Right.
They've just got other things that they need to work through. But but other than that, honestly, it's individuals who have been, incarcerated in the past and have turned their lives around. They can be some of the best mentors, honestly.
Yes.
But the applications also, help us to be able to fully understand, what maybe treatment perspectives a core member should be looking at. The mentors, that's helpful to the mentors so that they can help guide them towards appropriate counseling or treatment. We've never had any incidents of danger in our program.
Yeah, and people might, you might be a little bit uncomfortable at first thought about this, but I think once you meet the people, and I want to, through one man that has recently come into our church and where I pastor, he had been 23 years on drugs and had become a very hardened man, but he met Jesus and his heart changed instantly. And so I said to him, his name is Gene, I said, Gene, I want you to take me and introduce me to some of your friends. He said, oh, you don't know my friends. And I said, I don't care, I want to meet them. And so he's been, for a year now, he's been taking me to meet some of his friends. And some of these people are still on some form of drugs or alcohol. But the thing that, like you said, Steve, if we love them where they're at, accept them and do not judge them, it's amazing to me how much they'll open up to you. It takes a little time because they don't trust. But I find that many of these people have kind and soft hearts. And I just think it's a great opportunity. And so you need mentors, and there's other volunteer opportunities besides the mentoring, though. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. We do need anyone who's interested in volunteering as a mentor. Please contact me. Contact Deacon Bill. we could use as many as possible. We are in Cedar Rapids is a city of about 120,000 people. We are currently mentoring about 36 people out of 100, and so you can imagine that the need. I've got applications that really there's a large need. They could also volunteer with the RISE program as a navigator, which is a little different than the mentoring program, or they could volunteer in the jail chaplaincy program.
Okay, and they can get all this information. There is a brochure, by the way, and but you can go on their website. That information will be posted, so you can go on the website. There's phone numbers that you can call. There's email addresses if you want to get more information or want to visit with one of these. And so I'm going to ask Deacon Bill, you have had the joy and privilege of watching people's lives change. What does that feel like?
It feels like God has involved humanity in His work of redemption. We have a small role to play with His help and His direction to bring people to Him, and that's what is most fulfilling. You asked earlier about safety issues and how volunteers may be a little hesitant to get started, and I would say the folks we work with are motivated. This is not easy to do, and so we don't get people asking for mentors or circles who aren't really motivated to change. And so they kind of self-screen themselves. We don't get people that are just in it for bad reasons. The other thing is, the only safety issue I would say is kind of a personal mental health thing, where you have to be prepared for relapse and failure sometimes.
Yep.
Because progress in this ministry is never a straight line from A to Z or A to B.
Right.
It's always 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Yep.
We work with a lot of people in drug court, for example, and folks with addictions are told that relapse is part of recovery.
Yes.
And you have to just be prepared for that occasional relapse, that occasional failure, and then pick yourself up and get started again. And so what it means to our volunteers is you have to steel yourself and ask for God's help whenever someone you're working with does stumble and fall, and to be there to help them to get back online again. We have, as I said, a lot of people in drug court, and if we were to just judge on their first mistake, there'd be a lot of failure. But again, the drug court is very patient with them, and they allow the stumbling, and they allow the learning and the getting back on the road, and it's good to see. It's good to be a part of that. So it's very uplifting to be involved in this. I hear over and over from our volunteers that I get more out of this than I ever feel that I give. I hear that almost universally.
You know, I was thinking about that, you know, when I say this to people about sharing their faith with others and through whatever ministry or whatever means, that people say, well, I'm a little bit nervous about talking to people, and I say to them, when the love of Christ fills your heart, that love will be greater than the fear or nervousness you have about talking to people. And so I think about this and what you said about, you know, that how did you say that? It's not a straight road. Recovery is not a straight road. It's a crooked path oftentimes. And for us to love people enough that if they slip, if they whatever, that it does not move you, because the love of Christ that's within you is what is propelling you and motivating you.
Yes.
Well, and we in our mentoring training, we teach the expectation that we're really interested in today and tomorrow. We really, as mentors, yesterday doesn't matter, because we're not here to judge them. That'll be God and Jesus that will judge for yesterday.
Yes.
But we're going to focus on today and tomorrow. And as Bill said, you know, sometimes we can have a wonderful meeting with a core member, and then the next day something may happen in their lives where they either return to jail, or maybe they relapse, or maybe some other calamity occurs. But we really focus on the success of that day.
Yes.
And you'd be surprised, I've had it on at least 2 occasions where individuals, core members that I have mentored or been a part of a circle, and they had relapsed, but they came back, they cleaned their lives up later, and I met them again, and they said, you know what though, that one time you said to me in that meeting, that really stuck with me, and that's what motivated me later. So you see, that successful meeting that day laid a seed that bore fruit later. And so that's what we really focus on is, you know, any day that you can share your love and support of another person, that's a successful day.
Yes. And, you know, conveying the love of Christ, and so that they know. I think that's the other part. When people have made huge mistakes and it's hurt some of the closest people to them, family members, get hurt whenever something like this happens and somebody fails or falls. It's hard for them to forgive themselves. And forgiveness is a very big issue. And maybe, Brother Bill, you could address the forgiveness issue. Do you find that when ministering to these people that they have a hard time forgiving themselves and getting...
Absolutely. That's the biggest stumbling block, is to be able to forgive themselves. And so when they witness other people being kind to them and valuing them, it helps them. It helps to raise their self-worth, their self-esteem, and they can learn to forgive themselves.
I like that word self-esteem, because I think that most people have a poor image of themselves.
Yes.
They only see what they've done wrong. They don't see the potential that they were born with, that God put inside of them when they were conceived. And I think that's part of our job, is to point out the good qualities in other people, especially the ones that have made mistakes, because all they can think about and remember is what they've done wrong. And so to point out the good that's in them because of God is something that most people don't get, is that kind of encouragement. Brother Steve, in closing, any last words you'd like to say?
I would like to thank you for having us. This is fabulous, and we're grateful for any attention that the folks at home have given to us and this message. And if anyone is inspired to even learn a little bit more about it, I'm all ears. I'm here.
Good. Brother Bill, any last thoughts or comments?
If anyone is considering being a volunteer in the program, I would encourage them maybe to start with a circle where you're not the only one. You get to learn by watching other people, and it makes it easier, and it takes a lot of the tension and maybe jitteriness or jitteriness away. So
I want to thank both of you for being on the program, because I'm blessed by this, and I know that a lot of the viewers are going to be blessed by this. And please consider being a volunteer. There's people out there waiting. You heard them say there's a lot more people that they can reach that need the help, but they just don't have the people to do it. And you know what? There will be treasure in heaven. Jesus said, don't store up treasure on earth, but store it up in heaven. So thank you for watching. Share it with other people. Tell them about this ministry. God bless you.